Hi there, and welcome to Descriptive Statistics. This PowerPoint will be the first time that we actually delve into statistics, so I am hoping that it goes over well and you guys clearly understand everything I'm explaining. Descriptive statistics are used to describe the data. They're not used to test hypotheses, so no comparisons are ever computed. They're only used just to describe. The examples that I have up on the PowerPoint are computing a range, a mean, a standard deviation, the mode, the median, frequencies, and percentages. So all of these would be descriptive statistics, which are sometimes enough for your statistics project, by the way. Well, more on that later. The first thing that you do after you collect data is you calculate descriptive statistics on your demographics. So, as mentioned before, you always collect information about your sample so that you can describe them. So, examples are age, ethnicity, gender, relationship status, parental status, family background, geographic location, income, career, grade, whatever. It can be anything. It should be relevant to what you're studying, and usually, almost always, we have age, ethnicity, and gender. Beyond that, it really just depends on what you're studying. Actually, let me just go back. If you recall, a couple of PowerPoints ago, I talked about how there are only two types of variables that are relevant to statistics. The first one is categorical, the second one is continuous. A continuous variable always comes to you in numeric format. I think I gave the example of age, so it's not anything you ever want to put into a category. You simply ask people to give you their age, they give you a number, and that is a continuous variable. Comes to you as a number. A categorical variable, on the other hand, is a variable where you have to assign a value in order to complete analysis on it. So ethnicity, people have different ethnic backgrounds, but they don't give you a number. So if I was to ask you, what is your ethnicity? You're not going to say 2. You are going to give me a word. So generally, we have Caucasian, African American, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, etc. And you have those categories as the researcher, and you list them for your participant to select, but then you have to assign a number to it before you can enter that information into a data set. So that is a categorical variable. You're always going to have to assign a value to it, where a continuous variable you will always get as a numerical format, like age or even a Likert type scale. The reason I mention this is because when you are calculating statistics, there are only certain types that you can calculate on variable types. So you can only calculate certain statistics on continuous variables versus categorical variables. And that will be more important later, but you'll hear me say that again. So, before running a computation to test hypotheses or answer research questions, you have to use descriptive statistics, not only on the demographic variables, but also on all of the variables. You want to describe them the best you can to your ability. In other words, before conducting an independent samples t-test, a correlation, a chi-square, or an ANOVA, you would first calculate the mean and standard deviation for any of your continuous variables and the frequencies for any of your categorical variables. Like I said, we will come back to this again. As I indicated earlier, descriptive statistics are also used to describe your sample. Here's an example. This is an example of a write-up after conducting some descriptive statistics. The sample was comprised of 200 participants from Eastern Illinois University. 60% of the sample were male and 40% were female. The average age of the participants was 20.3. Standard deviation is 1.8. The majority of the sample was Hispanic, 74%, followed by African American, 18%, and Asian, 8%. Participants were asked about their relationship status, and 44% indicated that they were single, 20% were married, and 36% were in dating relationships. Only 12% of the sample reported that they had any children. So you can see how that's nicely summarized. The descriptive statistics were used to analyze the demographic variables in this particular example. We often use charts and tables to illustrate the descriptive statistics that we calculate. So here's an example of a chart or a figure, as they're called in APA, of the ethnicity of a sample. And you can see that you have the actual chart here, you have the legend over here, so that you can determine which piece of the pie belongs to which type of ethnicity. And then down here you have figure 1, you have the title of the figure, and then you have the statistical symbol of a large N, which indicates the sample size. This is an example of a table, also in APA format, and you'll see that now we have the title up here. It's because tables are formatted differently than figures. So you have table 1, you have the title, and then you have again the statistical symbol of N indicating how big the sample was. Then we have the table here. We've listed the variables. In this case it's TV watching and hours, which would be a continuous variable because people indicate hours. Studying and hours, again a continuous variable. How many alcoholic drinks they have per week, that is also going to be a number, so that's continuous. Their commute time in hours per day, also continuous. Their GPA, which is a continuous variable, also comes to you as a number. And then we have a Likert scale where they indicate how stressed they are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being more stress. So once again, that is a numerical variable, which would be continuous. In this column you have the means or the averages. Probably all of you are very familiar with average. And then the standard deviation. And we're not going to go into great detail about the standard deviation. What you do need to know for the purposes of this class is that a larger standard deviation means that the variable there's more variance in it, and so the range is larger. So when you have a 5.03 standard deviation, the range is much larger than, say, a 0.36 like we do with stress, where the range is much smaller. The variables are not spread out as much. And we do have to report it. Anytime you report a mean, you have to report the standard deviation as well. So we're going to do an application. I realize it's kind of quick and dirty, but hopefully the example I give you will provide more detail. I'm going to have you open the Excel file that's in D2L, and it's under the Dropbox. You'll see it is due June 28th. It's called Descriptive Statistics Example. You're going to calculate some statistics, and then you're going to create a figure. So let me just get out of here, and here, and here, and go to the same worksheet that you will see in D2L. So what I have here is an example of a data set. The first variable is age, and people, you can see they're 1 through 20 participants, so there's 20 participants and they've indicated their age. And then the second column is the ethnicity variable, and then the third column is the gender variable. And I've added a code book here so you know what those numbers mean. Remember, when you ask somebody their ethnicity, they don't say 3 or 1. They tell you a word, but you have to put that into a number. The same with gender. Now, depending on which version of Excel that you have, I don't know if you guys have done this before, but it's not too awfully difficult to, well, at least to calculate the mean, which is the average. What you're going to do is click in this box here. You're going to type equal, which indicates that you are going to type a formula. And then you would type average. It's going to want a range. So once I put in the first parentheses, you'll see it asks for number and then number 2. I'm going to tell it to calculate from A1, give it a colon, to A20. Add another parentheses and then hit enter. And so what you see here now, what we have is the average for this column of numbers. So the average age was 21.7. If I was going to write that up, I'm going to insert a text box right here and say the average age for the sample was 21.7. Theoretically, we should also calculate a standard deviation. Again, depending on what form of Excel that you have access to, you may be fortunate enough where you can go to formulas, I believe, and then insert, and it's going to give you all these options for a function. That's my kitty cat meowing. She wants to play. She's carrying her mouse around. Statistical, I'm going to find standard deviation here. Here it is. I'm going to select this, but I'm going to get rid of that P. And then I'm going to put the numbers in again. So it would be A1. Oops. They have to be in the parentheses to A20. And then I'll hit enter. Now it's given me the standard deviation. What's important about that again is that you report it, not so much that you understand it, and you always round off to 2 decimal points. So I should have actually added a 0 here. Then I'm going to add a space, add SD equals 3.76 because we round up. And then I want to italicize the SD because that is a statistical symbol for standard deviation. So that's how I'd write up the mean once I've calculated that. The frequency distribution, on the other hand, is a little different and a little trickier. What you're going to do, and this is gonna kind of not really make sense. It didn't really make sense to me either, but this is just how you conduct a frequency. And all that means is that we want to know how many African Americans, how many Caucasians, how many Asians, and how many Hispanics are in this sample. And I realize that the sample is small enough that you could actually count it by hand. But that leaves room for error, and we want to know how to calculate this on Excel. We have to do something first called bins. I have no idea why, but that's what we do. I'm going to put bins ethnicity, and then the numbers that we have are 1 through 4, but I'm going to start with 0 because that's where I have to for some strange reason. And then I've added the 4 different types or bins. Once I've done that, I'm going to select all of these, and then I'm going to type equal, but it will be frequency that I want to use. And then you're going to get something that looks like this: data array and bins array. The data array is very similar to what we did to find the average. Oh my goodness. This is not playtime. So now my dog is bringing a toy. Okay, so dog playing hopefully over. cat playing also over. Let's go back to the frequency distribution. So I created these bins. What I'm going to do now is make sure to highlight all 5 of these right next to the bins, and then I'm going to type in equals frequency, grab that function, and again we're at data array and bins array. So first my data array is going to be B1 through B20, so I'm going to grab that there, add a comma, and now it's asking for my bins array, which is 0 through 4. See, once I grab that, it did H2 through H6. Now here is the extra special part that you have to remember to do. If you forget to do it, just keep trying, because I kept messing it up too. You're going to hit Control and Shift at the same time, and then you're going to hit Enter. Okay, once you've done that, you should have this. And what this is telling us is that, and it might be easier if I just add a label here, because number 1 equals African American, there were 5 African Americans. This is 2, there were 8 Caucasians. There were 5, because 3 equals Asians. And then there were 2 Hispanic individuals in this sample. So those are the numbers we were looking for. This is the frequency distribution for ethnicity, and that's how it's calculated. Let's do also gender, just so we can practice. I'm going to pick another place here. I'm just picking random, it really doesn't matter where. But once I do the frequency function, I'm going to have to make sure that they coincide. So over here I'm going to put bins, gender. And then we start with 0, 1, and 2. So these are my bins. Remember, I have to highlight all 3 of these cells to coincide with the bins. And then I'm going to type equal frequency. See, it's going to say, oh yeah, we already picked that up. And we want to do the data array first. It'll show us that. It's bolded here. I'm going to do C1 through C20. Add a comma. Now it's asking me for the bins array, which is here. H10 through H12. Remember, I'm going to hold Control and Shift before I hit Enter. And you should get something like this. So the code 1 is for male, you can see here. So I'm going to put male, just to make it less confusing, and then female. So that shows you how to conduct the frequency distribution. If we're going to create a figure, which you do also have to do, I'm going to open up Word, because almost always everything's going to be inserted in Word at some point. Here's your syllabus. I'm going to do File, New, and I'm going to hit Enter a couple of times just to bring it down a little bit. Then I'm going to do Insert Chart. In this case, I want a pie chart, just a plain old boring pie chart. Once I do that, it's going to open up another Excel worksheet, which is fine. We want it to do that. And remember that our labels were African American, Caucasian, Asian, and Hispanic. Oops. I'm going to delete these numbers because those are not the numbers that we want. And then I'm going to go back to, or just minimize this to grab these numbers, 5852. So I'm going to add 5, 8, 5, 2. There is a very explicit worksheet that goes over this in more detail in the Dropbox. You'll see that when you go to do the assignment. Once I have these numbers in, I'm going to close this. Go back to Word, and here's my pie chart. I have to put this in APA format, as is consistent with this class. So, and again, it shows you how to do this on the worksheet, so I'm going to do this kind of quick. But I'm going to highlight column and delete because it's not where the title is supposed to go. Then I'm going to make sure that I'm on this line, this blue line, and I'm going to do a right mouse click and select Format Chart Area. Then I'm going to find Line and say No Line, please. And then OK. And then I want to get my mouse down below the figure or the chart. I'm going to go down. I want there to be a good amount of space here. I'm going to type figure 1, then enter. Ethnicity for participants is my title. Recall that we had 20 people in this study, and I put a space between these. Sometimes students crush those up together. I don't really know why. Figure 1 has to be italicized, as does this N, because it's a statistical symbol, but nothing else in the second line has to be italicized. And then I have my figure 1, ethnicity of the participants, which is kind of fun. That's what you're going to add your name to and submit in the Dropbox by June 28th to show that you know how to do this. Okay, that's all I've got for now. Sorry for the animal disruption, and I hope you guys enjoy your week.